How you doing? I'm out looking for a new barn owl site and I think I found one. Right, so for any of you that remember, when I did my last video on the tawny owls, to put a link up there, I mentioned in that video that I'd been out running and I thought I'd found a potential new barn owl site. Now, you might be asking why I need a new barn owl site, and for those of you that watch my videos a lot, you'll know that the area where I live suffers an awful lot with flooding because we're right near the River Trent. And so I was out running the other day and got to about 5k. I was just about to turn round and I noticed this white ghost over the field. It was about 4:30, a barn owl. And I thought, right, immediately my mind clicked. I've got a potential site. And after running that route several times, again around the same time, so I got there at the same time, 3 out of 4 occasions that barn owl was hunting in that field. So that gives me hope that that is going to be a decent place to photograph barn owls. It's what I've been looking for a while because of all the flooding. So yeah, let's go and take a look at it. Now for me, barn owls are just such a captivating subject to photograph and to film. And I also think that for people who are like just starting out in wildlife photography, if you've maybe just done garden birds and you really want to get a massive bang for your buck, there's not much else you can do better than the barn owl. It's quite accessible compared to some other owls because it tends to hunt quite regularly at dawn and dusk, so you get the opportunity to see it in the light, and we'll go into some reasons why that might be the case and why that makes it easier to photograph. And we'll also look at how to identify a potential site, and hopefully, yeah, that'll help you find a site and get the images that you're looking for. But I'm super excited for this one because I think this could be a really good site. So what are we looking for in a potential barn owl site? Well, what you really want to try and find is fields that are left as scrub. So what you don't want to do is find fields that have regularly got sheep or cattle on them, because the reason the owls prefer that sort of land is because under all that scrubby grass is where you'll get voles and mice living. And if they're living in there, then the owl's going to want to hunt over it. If you've got a field, and I've got a field near me that is typical of this, it's like for 10 months of the year it's left as scrub, and you get a good volume of mice and voles in there. But then the farmer comes and puts sheep on it and it's down to like this. So all the stuff that was there is gone. So if you can find a field that is sort of historically left to its own devices, maybe it might be cut for hay occasionally, but other than that, it doesn't get any animals on it and they just leave it, that has a potential to be a good site for not only barn owls, but loads of birds of prey, because there'll be a good food source under there. So anyway, looking at this one here, as you can see, this field behind me, and I'll try and get the drone up actually. It's a bit windy today, so the drone could end up anywhere. And I have a history with dropping drones in water, which there is water around here. This is where I saw the barn owl hunting, across this field here, and it's only a tiny area. It stretches around the side of this beck, so there's a water course here. And one of the problems with it is it's also a public footpath. So what I've noticed is that you get loads of people walking the dogs. But luckily for me, there's a hedge just here, and the other side of that hedge is another field that it looks like it's just completely left. It's only small, it's only a small area, but nobody goes in there, there's no footpaths. It is very much just left. And I think that could be perfect. So let's go over and have a look at it. Hopefully you can see some drone footage of it, and I'll point out the areas to you on there. But let's have a look. Shut the car up and we'll take a walk. So as I say, I could set up in that field, but my problem with that field is if I set up a hide, or if I'm sat there, dogs are going to run over, people are going to wonder what I'm doing. I'm just going to get bothered. But here we have what I would consider a pretty perfect field. Now when I came on and had a look, the first thing I noticed is there's loads of animal runs. There's animals running around here all the time, and there's several areas where there's loads of burrows for rabbits. So, and it's just left, as you can see, it's just classic sort of ground that you're going to get little mammals living in. So if you're a beginner at wildlife photography and you're looking for a site like this, the pointers you really need to look for is you need to look for that undisturbed, like pasture grass, common ground where it's been left, pretty much like this all around me, as you can see here. This is absolutely perfect. You can see you've got all this long grass, tufty. There'll be runs underneath this. There'll be runs underneath this where the mice and stuff are running around. Absolutely perfect for what a barn owl wants. It wants all these runs, it wants loads of these small mammals, because that's what it's going to feed on. So if you can find a piece of land like that, that's the first thing. As a beginner, the second thing I would say is if you find bits of land like that, you're going to have to put a little bit of time in and just get there at the right time of the day. So if I was to give you any advice, at the minute it's a little bit early, but as you imagine, when they've got youngsters, if there's a barn owl pair with youngsters in this area, they're going to be feeding like crazy. So dawn and dusk, you have the potential to see them flying around. Now, one of the things to remember about barn owls is that their feathers aren't waterproof. So you can imagine that if it rains all night and they're hungry, they can't go out and get any food because they can't fly in the really wet, horrible weather. They also don't like it if it's windy, which I'm a little bit disappointed with today because I was hoping it wasn't going to be this breezy. I don't think it's enough to put them off. But if you get any strong winds, they're not going to be feeding either. So if you get either strong winds, rain, or both overnight, then potentially early in the morning, if all that clears away, it's calm, there's no rain, that barn owl is going to be out hunting when it gets light. And that also means that if they've got youngsters, doubly so, because they're having to feed youngsters as well, which means that they're going to be working twice as hard. So those periods, if you ever get periods in this breeding season, sort of after mid-March, where you've got rain at night, you can almost guarantee that that means that if you've got land like this, that barn owl is going to be hunting. So yeah, you're going to have to do a little bit of work, but once you've done that, if you identify that they're flying here, then you've got a potential good site, and then it's when you start to get your camera out and your position set up. So, and if we talk a little bit about position to set up to take images of these barn owls, or this barn owl, the things I'm looking for are wind direction. Now in the UK we generally have a southwesterly wind a lot of the time. That's the prevailing wind, which is over here. So anybody who knows anything about birds of prey when they're hunting, they generally hunt into the wind. So, and if you can imagine a thing like a kestrel, it's using that wind coming under its wings to get that hovering. Barn owls do it as well. So barn owls will generally go backwards and forwards, but they will be heading into the wind. So for me, in this field, I don't want to be in this hedge over here because the wind's going to be in my face which means that if the barn owl is hunting, it's going to come over my head and I'm going to get loads of back end shots, which is not what I'm looking for. So with the wind generally coming in this direction, my best bet is to get in this hedge over here. The wind behind me, which means when the owl's finished in this first field that I showed you and potentially comes over this hedge into this field, it's going to be headshots. And the other good thing about that is, obviously with sun direction, the sun rises in the east, which is over here, and sets in the west, which is over here. So at night time or in late afternoon, the sun is going to be behind me and going down, which means the owl's coming towards me into that prevailing wind, into the setting sun, which means I'm going to get the right light and the right conditions to have that owl facing me. Now, potentially I could use this site in the mornings, which means that if I'm set up over there, as I would be, the sun is going to be in my face, which means that for a creative decision, I may be trying to get one of those shots with, you know, the rising sun coming through the owl's wings, so I get that lovely silhouetted, or, you know, the like fiery end to the wings where the light's coming through, the golden light. So again, that could be a creative decision, and that could be something I do a little bit later on. But initially what I'm going to try and do is do some shooting of the owl in the evenings when I've got the sun going down behind me. So a more classic shot, if you like. Anyway, if you're a beginner, that's my tips for you. That's how I set up and how you should set up when you find one of these sites. Right, so I've set up where I said I was going to set up. I'm in this hedge here. The sun will be going down behind me. The wind's coming from behind me today, and I'm hoping the owl's going to come over this hedge in the front. As regards the setup here, for anybody who's just starting out, I have got a tripod here today with a fluid head. The reason I've got that is I'm going to try and do some filming in slow motion of the owl if it turns up. Now that's much easier to do, to get steady, nice footage on this sort of setup. Now if you're just, you know, starting out and you haven't got these expensive fluid heads and stuff like that, you can just sit here with a camera. And a lot of the time that's what I'll do. Now the other thing I've got here is just some netting. Now this is Tragopan, I think. It's just like a blanket, and it has a hole in it where you can slide your lens through. And I just really drape that over here as much as I can, and over the front of the tripod, the lens, just to sort of break the shape up really. Covers my feet up as well. And that's all I've got. You could use scrim netting, anything, just to break your shape up so you don't look typically human. And a lot of the time that's enough for the owls just to either ignore you or just really check you out. They'll come and check you out and get quite close. And again, if you've only got a 300mm lens, that's ideal. That's when you'll get your shots. And that's it really. Yeah, I say some of the stuff you don't need. I typically don't. I probably will use a hide at some point, but that will be more when I've got to know the owl's patterns. So by sitting here and doing a number of sessions, I will know which direction the owl comes from, where it goes, when it goes there, when it comes into this field, when it heads off somewhere else. And when I was running down that road, on the left-hand side, about 300 metres further along, there's a very small field. And it's like this, but it's like size of somebody's back garden. It's not very big at all, but it's all scrubby. And there is a box up in the tree. So I'm wondering if it's coming from there and it's going to come from that direction. From what I saw the other day, on the couple of days when I was running through, it seemed to start in that field and then eventually come through to this one. So once we get to know its patterns, it might be that we'll bring a hide down and set it up. But I typically don't like hides a lot of the time because it just restricts your view of everything else. You've got a view out in front, but if there's a fox in this field at the side of me, I wouldn't know because I'm in the hide. I can only see that unless I'm continually looking at little side holes and stuff in the hide, which you don't tend to do. Whereas now, you know, I've got free view to look around me. Now the only other thing I have bought that I'll put on, and again this is just to break up my shape and get rid of sort of anything that looks vaguely human. So I've got some of these gloves that will hide my hands, And I've got one of these that I'm going to put over my head. I don't actually, there's a bit of netting that comes down in front of your face. I tend to tuck that over the top of my head because I don't like it. But again, it'll just break up my shape and make me look more part of the environment. And that's really all I'm going to do. And hopefully that'll be enough if the owl turns up for me to get some shots. So yeah, fingers crossed, let's see how we go. Got a barn owl, got a barn owl. It's just gone across this field, straight into the other field. That's like exactly what I thought it would do. I nearly got caught out there because there's a single red arrow doing a little bit of a display in front of me. Must be out getting some practice in, but there's only a single one. But the owl's gone across into this field, and he is hunted in there. I keep seeing him because the hedge hasn't got any leaves on it at the minute. I just keep catching a glimpse. Oh, I think he's coming over. Right, I'm just going to finish the video now as we've got the last bit of light. It is actually a lot darker than it looks on this screen. The owl stayed around for quite a while and did quite a few turns around the field. I managed to get that video, which I hope you enjoyed. And I've also got a couple of images which I'll put at the end of this video now. If you did enjoy it, then please give the video a thumbs up. And also, if you've got any comments or any tips for other people that I've missed on how to photograph barn owls and how to find a site to photograph barn owls, then please leave them in the comments below. Anyway, I'll see you soon for another one. Bye.